I'd like to introduce you to the notion of a target group. And these target groups, we're going to look at 3 of them within this tutorial. We're going to look over here at ethnic minorities. We could today refer to this, as I write this, as the BAME community. Okay, so ethnic minorities, I'm going to put in here BAME. Okay, that is the term being used as at the moment I record this. And what we're also going to do is we're going to have a look at the target group of gender, specifically looking at female provision and participation. And then finally we're going to have a look, well, not necessarily final, we may be doing it concurrently, but we're also going to have a look at disability. Okay, so these are the 3 target groups or groups of participants that we're going to consider in relation to provision. And when we talk about this provision, I'm really looking to talk about the issues related to participation for members of these different target groups and communities. So where should we start? I wrote ethnic minorities down first, so let's go for that. So a couple of things that we would consider to be issues. So I want to be clear here, issues. Okay, so I've written them in green, but these are the issues, all right? We're going to go here first. We are saying that this group experiences in some activities underrepresentation. Okay, so if I look at effectively non-white groups in the UK, for example, let me just drag that across slightly. Underrepresentation, that's meant to say. Underrepresentation. All right, we might be talking about non-white groups' representation in swimming, in equestrian, in cycling, amongst other activities that I could potentially name for you. So that is a problem, that is an issue. We'll look at the potential solving of it in a second. We also get the notion of stacking. Interesting word to use, this one. This is actually the notion of over-representation in very specific positions or activities. So you might notice that Afro-Caribbean British participants in sports such as athletics, in football, in rugby, they might be positioned in certain roles that seems to suit in air quotes that kind of ethnic heritage. So we tend to find in football we get a lot of players who would be sort of winger, wide midfield type performers. In athletics we get people who seem to be socialized towards sprinting as opposed to long distance running or javelin throwing, for example, with lots of exceptions of course. So we get this stacking, and one of the areas you don't get a stack and you get an underrepresentation is in the administrative and organisational side of sport, let's say national governing bodies, for example. And then finally, guys, there is an issue of socio-economic status. Now, again, this will be different for different groups, different non-white groups, okay? But socio-economic status, we could surmise, is going to be on average lower for these groups, and therefore issues of access and so on could become problematic. Now, we want to think about potential solutions. Okay, so what are these potential solutions? So, a couple of things we want to raise here. First of all, the education of all people would be really helpful towards the role of all types of people from all types of ethnicities in our society, in our history, and in global history. I think that would be really, really positive. There's also the argument about the socio-economic status that there could be certain fees that are reduced. Now, I don't think I'm suggesting there for people with different tones of skin. I'm suggesting there that fees should be made more accessible generally. And perhaps what's really important to stress here is the promotion of role models. Okay, the promotion of role models. And what I mean by that is when people do break the glass ceiling and make it through into the administrative side of a sport, for example, or they make it to be a head coach, or they make it to be represented in the sport that they're not, that their ethnicity is not particularly represented in, we can make a big point of that and make sure that that's very, very visible. Let's switch to gender. Guess what I'm going to write first? In lots of cases in sport, women are underrepresented. So we've got an issue. So I should be clear here, guys. This top group is issues. Okay, so we've got issues of underrepresentation. Okay, it's fairly obvious. Let's say in boxing, let's say in rugby, for example, it's pretty clear. We've also got issues of media coverage. One study in 2018 stated that men's sport is covered 20 times more frequently in British mainstream media. Why? Okay, it's an interesting question to just ponder. I'm not saying I have the answer. I'm posing it to you. You've also got one of the issues we have for gender roles is we have the tradition of sport. Now, I'm not going to get into a sports history lesson here, but if we look at the development of what we call codified or rationalised sport today, it came out of boys' public schools in the 19th century. So therefore, it's sort of based on the physicality and the masculinity of males, of biological males. That's kind of that tradition is where it's come from. We've got issues of access. Remember here, we could be talking about access to clubs, to competitions. It may be lesser in certain sporting opportunities. And this is a slightly sensitive point to make, but we do find in society that women take on other roles more frequently, such as parenting or caring for children, for example. That might be more typically done by women, with lots of exceptions, of course. Now, let me switch to my orange. These are some of the solutions in this target group. Okay, so what could be some of these solutions? So let's have a look. Could we encourage or even enforce, interesting statement, I don't know if I believe in that, I'm just saying it out loud, media balance, okay? What about providing opportunity for people to engage with childcare? I mean, I'm thinking about things like creches at leisure centres that have got reduced costs and so on. And could there be an argument, and different people have very different views of this, for equal pay for performers, let's say female tennis players compared to male tennis players at the top level, for example. These could be some of the potential solutions. Now, I'm going to finish off here with disability. What are some of our issues, guys? Let's go through these. So we've got issues with regard to what we describe as the model of disability. What do we mean by that? Well, the model of disability tends to focus on what people can't do rather than what they can do. It leads to society viewing people towards a deficient model rather than an enabled model. We've also got issues of access, as we've mentioned already before. We've also got issues of, again, media coverage. You know, let's be honest. Paralympic type sports are not well covered in the media on the whole. There are exceptions when the Paralympics on is different. And then we've got this sort of tradition of separation and otherness, and that, of course, can be quite negative. Now, what are some of it? Let's go to our orange again. What are some of our solutions? Okay, what are some of our potential solutions? Well, a big potential solution is in the Paralympic movement. I think it's been a wonderful, I'm not going to use that word, a wonderful and powerful movement for the almost for sort of disability sport enlightenment, right? I mean, it's really, I think, shone a light onto how entertaining, how high performing, how stimulating Paralympic sport is, and I think that's been really positive. We could encourage an increase in media coverage. I think it's getting better, but it's very, very gradual. And finally, guys, we could achieve something where more people experiencing disability could have better access to competition and club structures. I mean, let's be clear, if an individual wants to take part in a wheelchair basketball club, they are not ten a penny, they are not everywhere. Now, of course, there's reasons for that, I understand, but making competition and club structure available to more people would, of course, sort out issues of access, at least potentially.